Hello, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'll just want to have an exercise quickly to make sure everybody settles down. Okay. Okay. Cool. Uh, all right. So my talk is about Cloud Lens. It's an open source tool that we developed, which helps you navigate like cloud resources on your terminal. I want to ask, how many of you are like have built or contributed to open source? Show of hands. Okay, a few of you. How many want to contribute to open source? Why only so few hands? Who doesn't want to contribute to open source? Okay, that's more like it. Okay, right? Cool. This talk is about like if you want to contribute to open source and looking for a project or looking to see how to go about it, this is the talk, right? So I'm Chinmay. I'm founder at One2N, where we help companies with reliability engineering and backend engineering. I like engineering overall, programming, psychology, and I write stories on our pragmatic kind of engineering on social media, Twitter, etc. So follow me there if you're interested. And I'm a huge fan of a game called Age of Empires. Anyone knows? Okay, a few. Okay, oh, so many people. Like more than people who want to contribute to open source. All right. So we started with an idea that what if we had AWS console in terminal, right? What would it take to build something like that, right? So we decided, hey, we need some. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, we'll need some sort of terminal user interface, TUIs. Yeah, just right. So if you wanted to build AWS console in terminal, we'll need something known as uh, terminal user interface. And uh, we evaluated a few called, one is called SAWS, which is supercharged AWS, which is a CLI for that. Then there is lazy docker, which is another one which allows you to view docker images and volumes, etc. locally via terminal. Next we looked at K9s. How many of you know K9s, have tried K9s? Okay, a few, right? So it's a tool for Kubernetes, for example, to view. So we decided to go with, we said that, hey, let's go with K9s, right? Like it clearly gives a good UI where we can visualize AWS resources. So let's go with that. So we went with K9s. So think about what K9s is for Kubernetes, Cloud Lens is for AWS and GCP, right? So K9s has, you call it like Kubernetes is called K8s. So we early thought like, should we call Cloud Lens C7s? But then, yeah, that didn't have the same ring to it, right? So we said, top it to the idea, right? So just start with Cloud Lens. How did we go about it, right? We started with understanding the K9s code base, look at the terminal like UI libraries that they use, how it renders the tables, what kind of elements that is it use for table cells and whatnot. Then figure out how TUIs are different from web UIs, right? Like in web UI, you have JavaScript, so you can click a button and then add action listener or whatever to that, right? On click listeners and whatnot. How do you do it in terminal, right? So we started with building a prototype in first 2 weeks, and then what we have in 2 weeks is something like this, where we have, you can select profile from the tool, which is your AWS profile, and it can then show you services like S3, EC2, and you can select and then it will show you resources for that, right? Yeah, so as you see here, you can see EC2 instances, right? Then what Cloud Lens looks like today though is much more advanced, much more different. So you have one on the left side, you have profiles as a drop-down select, then you have menu options, then you have a table where you can see EC2s, you can see S3 and all other resources, and you can even export them with like just command with Z. It will create you a command, it will export the thing as a CSV. This is particularly useful in case you want to play with the data and like try out a bunch of things. Doing that via web UI becomes much more harder, right? So similarly, we have EC2 details. Then you can again copy that all of the JSON with clipboard and whatnot. what is Cloud Lens then? It's written in Go. It's open source. It has these nice muscle memory friendly shortcuts. So, and it kind of needs no extra configuration. You can just install it and run it, and it will connect to your AWS account and it will do everything, right? It has these features where you can look at images, lambdas, and whatnot, and we're adding many more. For example, you can select the regions, you can select profiles, stuff like that. You can get IAM users. You can get, for example, you can see how you can sort the table with various columns. For example, created date or any other column that you want to sort it by. And then you can see S3 buckets. You can basically see a lot of AWS resources, right? It's not just limited to AWS though. Recently, we added support for GCP. So Cloud Lens now also supports GCP. So in GCP, we have these features that we support, where you can see VMs, you can see disks, you can see images, and whatnot, right? So overall, that's been the feature list for Cloud Lens. Again, in GCP, we want to quickly go through. You can select the zone and the region. You can select the buckets, for example. You can do VMs, and then next you can do bunch of things, right? So fundamentally, like, you get the idea. Like you will be able to guess a Cloud Lens feature, and you will most likely see that it is there, right? In case it is not, you can get help by just pressing a question mark, and it will give you a help on what all is supported, how it works, etc. Right? So quickly, I want to talk about the journey of building Cloud Lens, right? What we went through. So there is 3 main challenges that we looked at. One is handling the credentials for AWS and GCP. Second is the testing of the Cloud Lens. Like, how do you test this kind of thing without having to spin up cloud resources, right? And lastly, how do you upgrade Cloud Lens? Like, if you have a newer version, how do you make sure that everybody gets the same version all at the same time and whatnot, right? So let's look at these 3 challenges real quick. On the handling of credentials, there are 3 options. One is you do it with a old style, like with AWS access keys, secret keys, and next would be use the credentials file, for example. What we wanted to also do is we wanted to support SSO credentials, which are single sign-on, where you don't have to, you don't have the access key and secret key on your local. You can do the login with SSO, right? So for that, we had to use something in AWS SDK V2. So we were earlier using SDK V1. We had to upgrade to V2, for example, right? So this was one challenge. In testing, you've probably all, if you've written unit test, this is what it feels like when you write unit tests. In case of integration tests, this is what it feels like. So we did a good amount of testing using local stack. Local stack allows you to spin up cloud resources locally, almost like simulate them, not really spin up resources. So you can simulate a lot of AWS services, for example. And we also then wrote Cloud Lens Populator, a separate like a Go tool, Go repo, which would insert a lot of dummy data in local stack, right? That way we can test whether our UI, terminal UI shows paginations and whatnot, right? So second challenge was upgrading. So in case of upgrade, typically you would use Brew, Yum, etc., right? We said, what if we add like a self-update feature, right? So where you would just do Cloud Lens self-update, for example, like this, Cloud Lens update, and it will download the latest version if it's available, and it will install that, right? Like make it easier for you to install and upgrade to the latest version of Cloud Lens. Overall, what's the roadmap? What's next, right? Like we support AWS, we support GCP. Going forward, we want to add more features for both AWS, GCP. We want to ideally support Azure, maybe soon. And like I want to ask a question to you. Like if you had this tool and if you wanted to learn and contribute to open source, what will you build, right? Like just this kind of thing out in the open. We've had people who contributed to this. added the SSO integration, for example. Somebody created a pull request for a different bug that we had, and they solved it, right? So this is the first like really good, small enough repo for you to try out your first open source project, right? So if you're looking to start out to contribute to open source, you want to learn Go, give Cloud Lens a try, and this is where you can install Cloud Lens. It is available to see on GitHub. There is docs available. Take a look at that and yeah, contribute. Try to use it. See, report bugs, file issues, etc. Lastly, like if you're a fan of laptop stickers, I have these bunch of cool stickers. If you want them, reach out to me after the call, after the talk. And yeah, that's me, Chinmay. Happy to connect and talk further if you have any questions. Thanks. I know I'm holding you all from lunch, so that's why I wanted to make this quick. Correct. So the question is this a read-only UI or can you do more write operations, right? So for now, Cloud Lens is read-only because we wanted to make sure we don't do any destructive operations, and it's easier for people to say that if you're read-only, then they'll try out the tool. One of the reasons why we created this in the first place was we were doing cost optimizations for various companies that we were working with. And we had to look at a lot of AWS instances, look at the details, download something into CSV format, try it out. Like there was a lot of manual back and forth involved. And we felt that if we built like a terminal-based tool, and we were a fan of K9s back then, and we still are, we felt that this would make it easier for us to work with various cloud resources. So we added features like exporting things into CSVs and whatnot. In future, maybe there could be a plan to have update operations. You can launch a EC2, you can SSH into a machine, for example, stuff like that. But for now, it's still read-only. Correct. So yeah. So the question is, how does this differ from something like Terraform, any infrastructure as code tool? These are kind of two different use cases. This is more like a way to explore your cloud. Terraform, this is not a replacement for Terraform or any other infrastructure as code tool. It will be like you will spin up infrastructure using those tools, right? And maintain all the history in Git or wherever. And if you want to browse, like you can use, currently the option is obviously your AWS CLI and your AWS Web UI, right? Those are the two main options. We wanted to have a more visual option between the two, but on the terminal. And idea was very, very inspired by what K9s is. So if you work with Kubernetes, I would really encourage you to try K9s to see what it feels like, and it makes you super productive. You can connect to multiple clusters and whatnot. And the same idea was to build something like this, where we could visualize cloud resources much more easier. And then as part of our workload, like cloud cost optimization is one, a bunch of other as well, right? Monitoring a few things, looking at few things, etc. As part of that, it felt much more easier to work with terminal user interface than because the functionality is lacking, let's say, in Web UI on AWS, because they design it for the entire company, not for your specific use case. So for our specific use case, we were able to customize this tool and create a workflow that will help us, do some things faster. So exporting instances as CSV, one example. We are looking for some JSON value for entire the EC2 instance details. Those are some examples, for example. Yeah. The question was, is there any plan to integrate cost incurred till now or projections, etc.? I'm guessing. Maybe right now it's more very early stages, I would say, where it's still evolving to see and explore the cloud resources first. And then we could add specific, we could add maybe a shortcut or whatever, which will go into show how long has the instance been running, what's the monthly cost, because it knows the instance, almost like integrated with cost in some way. There is a potential to definitely do there, yeah. All right, cool. Thank you so much. If you're interested, do check it out and give it a try. This would be a good first open source project to try it out. All right, thanks.